Hi, I'm Adele Langevin, United States Navy, and fascinating stories. Thank you, ladies. Mine starts in a weird place. I was a dedicated peace activist during the Vietnam War, and at one point decided that I could make a bigger difference to maintaining peace within the military as opposed to standing outside holding a sign. And I went into as a direct commission as well, commissioned as an ensign in the Navy to do intelligence work. And that's what I went into, and that was my entire career as an intelligence officer. The program that they had come up with permitted all of the training to be done on your drill weekend and your 2 weeks a year. And that's what I did. And I participated in a variety of exercises, fleet exercises, tabletop exercises. I studied, we took hard tests, but I gradually, rose through the ranks because I worked hard. There were women and men. It was a very co-ed unit. And I did a good deal, all right? I knew 2 commanding officers of other units, and one unit was overwhelmed with work, and the other one had excess people, and we set up a detachment of the excess guys over with the guys who needed help. And I went back a decade later, and they were still doing that. And nobody, I'm sure, had any idea why they were doing that. But anyway, my commanding officers thought I had done a good job, and they made me an executive officer of a new unit. This was an NCIS unit, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, like the guys on TV. Mm-hmm. We didn't do any cool stuff like that. Okay, and most of the unit were law enforcement officers, and it was like, Adele who? Why is she here? Who is she? NCIS did and still does have intelligence analysts, but I was now the executive officer, and this was a new unit, and there was mounds of paperwork and forms and standing up the unit, and okay, fine. I think in 1999, I guess maybe, the USS Cole was attacked and damaged in the Persian Gulf. Mm-hmm. And at that point, our unit members were sent on long deployments to Kuwait, Bahrain. Bahrain, for those of you who don't know, is the headquarters of the United States Fifth Fleet. It's a little bitty island off the coast of Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf. So we started sending people forward to do force protection and counterterrorism, to try and figure out what was going to happen so you could prevent it from happening. And we were going forward on that basis, and then September 11th, 9/11 happened, and 2.5 weeks later, my entire unit, me included, we were all mobilized under Operation Noble Eagle. And everyone within 48 hours was on a plane going to some place in the world, including a whole bunch of people to Bahrain. As the executive officer of the unit, I had to stay behind and close out the unit with all the paperwork and all the forms and get everyone terminated as a reservist and enlisted as an active duty person. But my reward for staying behind was that I could pick wherever I wanted to go for the next round. They were doing 4-month rotations. And I thought, well, we had people then at that point in London, Marseille, Sigonella, Italy, and I'm thinking, boy, that'd be really neat. And my commanding officer, God love him, kept saying, come on, Adele, you and me, let's go to Bahrain. Let's go to Bahrain. Just like, get out of here. I'm not going to Bahrain. No, and he did it. And then I started to think, I had gotten pulled out of my corporate career. And I remember the look on my boss's face when I went in to tell him I was getting mobilized. And he said, how long are you going for? And I said, well, it could be as long as 5 years. And he was like, he went nuts. But anyway, so my commanding officer kind of wore me down, and I signed up for Bahrain. Which was interesting, in your words. It was not a combat zone, however, it was a hazardous duty zone. And while we were there, the government is a Sunni government. It's a Muslim nation. It's a Sunni government with a majority Shia population. And they were having a lot of civil unrest, and they were taking it out on the U.S. Military And while we were there, things deteriorated to the point where there were riots and people got killed and everything was off limits. The problem we had was it was a small base and everyone is mobilized in there. So they had to put us up in hotels all around Bahrain, and there was no security. We had no weapons, and it was scary. You know, you're just sitting there in, the hotel. I had a different schedule because I was a deputy staff counterintelligence officer, and I had to get up and do the message traffic and prepare the briefing for the admiral. And I'd get up at 2 o'clock, and I go out to the parking lot. There's no security. There's my car sitting there, my rent-a-car, and we were trained to crawl around under the car and make sure it wasn't tampered with, and you see wires, don't open the door. And, it was just unnerving. And then driving in the traffic and, with the riots happening, oh, look at the smoke over there, let's not go that way, Anyway, that was my experience there. I worked hard. I did some good work. I know it was good work. We used to have joint meetings with all of the other services in the area and with the CIA as well. And I figured out a couple of things, and I was very proud of that, and I can't tell you about it or I'd have to kill all of you. But, I worked hard, and I was there for 4 months and shipped home. I was promoted to captain, which in the Navy is like a colonel. And I was very pleased. I was very proud of my service, but my dear husband is sitting in the backyard. I'm going to tell you just a quick little story. This is a cool story. All right, so we all get mobilized. Like, wow, here we go. And in the time that we were mobilized, which was a total of 8 months, there were 4 war brides in my unit. And, a couple got married before mobilization because he was enlisted and she was an officer, and you can't do that unless you get married. And then 2 others occurred. And the last of the war brides was my dear husband sitting back there, Fred. And this was after we were demobilized, and the entire unit came to the wedding, which was cool. When I came home, and Fred will verify this, I was a mess. All the stuff that got me through Bahrain and just kind of driving around by myself, with riots going on, my determination and just drive through it, don't look up, drive through it. That enabled me to get through Bahrain. It was not so good coming back and going back to my job. And I was just driving through it, and I'm surprised Fred still married me at that point because I was kind of a mess. But over time, I became less messy, I guess, and was ultimately appointed commanding officer of the unit, which I was happy to serve. And I will say that my experience in the military is one of the proudest things I've ever done. I love our country, and I felt that I was really doing something important. And if anyone asked me, I would say I'm proud, but I would ask them to make their own choice as to whether they would want to go, because things change you, and not always in such a great way. So I guess that's the end of my story.